Diver-Gents, Diversity and Collective Exchange podcast, where we're going to talk about all things diversity and toxicity. I didn't say that right. But you know what I'm talking about. Toxic behavior. I'm educated. I'm a professor in college. I am Will, one of the 3 Diver-Gents, and you can find me on the social medias under Halfling Wizard. If you're on the TikToks, you can find me under Will on the Facebooks and various other socials. And I'm going to let my co-hosts introduce themselves now.
We love to see it. Hello, everyone. You are listening to the dulcet tones of Mikey, one of the other Diver-Gents here on this podcast. You can follow me on my personal socials at Pop Culture Geek or Vibe Tribe Productions. And I'm excited to be here. We're going to talk about some really amazing stuff, and I'm going to pass it on to my other co-host.
Saludos, programas, and welcome. I am the Nerdy Puerto Rican. You can find me on YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, and TikTok at the Nerdy Puerto Rican. And I am Divergent numero 3. And I am here to talk about the things.
Yes, and I want to say, first of all, I love the fact that you guys speak Spanish. I think that's fantastic. We're a very diverse group here. I speak no foreign languages. I speak white man, and that's about it. And so I'm so impressed by people who speak other languages. So I just love when you guys speak. I just love it. It's fantastic. So,
Claro que sí.
Look at that. See, I don't know anything. That's not true. I do know some things, but nothing. Not really. If I was dropped off in the middle of a Spanish-speaking country, I'd be screwed. Truly. Baño. I know bathroom.
That's half the battle then.
That is fair. All right. So back to important things. So today we're going to talk about sort of representation and if it was important to you to have representation either, and most of us are gamers, so we talk in terms of like tabletop role-play games or video games or other sort of gaming areas, but this sort of topic goes across everything really. This idea of television, movies, anime, that's any type of things like that was when you were first getting into these things, and I'm talking mostly for me through TTRPGs, was representation important to you when you first started any of those things? And I'm going to let my co-hosts begin because they have a lot to say.
Indeed.
You should hear us before we were recording. They have a lot.
I would just to say that this is a topic that is brought up by a YouTuber by the name of RPG Elite. He is a African-American gamer, tabletop gamer, who has a YouTube channel. And this question specifically is from his one episode of The Lie of Racial Representation in Tabletop RPGs. He's a very intelligent man, very well spoken. He makes a bunch of great points. If you ever get a chance to go see his content, please go check him out. Not only does he do racial and representation content, but he actually also does tabletop content as well. That's great. But yeah, so the question that he posed at the end of this episode was, when you started this, the question that he specifically said, when you first started playing tabletop RPGs, how was representation an important thing to you? And as Will said, I feel that this question can be expanded to the whole pop culture zeitgeist. Ooh, I said a big word.
That's true. Yeah, I know. It's like, I love it. The zeitgeist.
But so I'm gonna start, and because I've been thinking about this all day, man. It's been like just cranking away in my head, and I have to honestly say that when I first started playing, that representation wasn't important. At least to me, it wasn't important. What was important was that it was a escape. It was a fantasy escape. I got to be the hero. I got to be in this fantasy setting with dragons and these larger than things. And growing up, all my formative years, I was quite the outlier, and my nerddom and also my Puerto Ricanness, I really had to temper down because of the situation that I was in. But when that first time that I saw my brothers playing Dungeons and Dragons, and then that first time that I picked up the advanced D&D book and I looked at it and I saw the dice, I wasn't thinking to myself, and mind you, this was 6-year-old Adolfo, I think. Yeah, I wasn't thinking, are Hispanics represented in this? Are the Taino people represented in this? How am I going to find myself in this? I found myself. My first character was a half elf, and that's how I found myself. And I injected myself in that story, and that's what it was. It was the escape from all the crap that was going on around me, and I could be that hero that I saw on the TV. I could be that hero that I read in the books, and that to me was, and it was a place that I could just let my imagination run wild. And the whole for me, being an elder statesman in the nerddom as we are, William.
Quite.
Yeah, no, I'm 45, so like,
oh, you're still young.
When I started my nerddom journey, that was the whole thing of representation. The way that it has been built up was, to me, not a thing. It wasn't until later on when I started getting into adult Adolfo life, adult nerdy Puerto Rican life, that I had learned about racial prejudices, and I had learned about all that. That's when all of that got introduced into the picture. So.
And you're considered Gen X. Are you in that? Okay, I couldn't remember if you were in that. I didn't know if you were in that. Gen Xers, and this by no means this is an excuse by any means, but in Gen Xers we didn't care. It was like right. We just wanted to watch. We just wanted to watch cartoons, and whatever it was is what it was. We were playing games. We were just playing ourselves, and we didn't. And it's when you're younger. Because I remember when I was younger, like for instance, growing up, my best friend was Hispanic and Native American. His parents were mixed, and like we were best buds to this very day. He's like my brother, and so we never really thought of that. And you're right. It isn't until we were much older. And we became it's hard to what I'm trying to say. I don't want to say indoctrination because that's not the right word. But when we were educated on the ideas of representation or misrepresentation or stereotypes, because there were, and I will not lie. Back in the 1980s and all that, there were tons of stereotyped characters, and I'll bring one of them up because it just popped in my is Speedy Gonzales.
Yeah.
Boy, when I was a kid, I was like, I love that character. What a great, fun character that was. Yeah. Now I grow up and go, that was extremely racist and stereotypical. But it wasn't until I was adult when my innocence was taken from me. Because kids, for the most part, are not born that way. They're taught to be that way. And I'm going to loop it back around to what you were talking about and I'll talk about my experience real quick. I want to talk about getting involved in TTRPGs and representation. And I am a gay man, a white gay man. And representation to me in TTRPGs was a scary thing. Because I grew up in a time where if you were gay, that you could die. So representation to me was like, I don't want it. And if you look at from the very beginnings of D&D, for instance, elves were always the effeminate characters. I stayed as far away from elves as I possibly could because of that. I didn't want to be associated with that because I knew, watch the news, you hear the things. If someone was like, oh, I think he might be on the light and the loafer side, the next thing you know, you're getting your ass kicked. if not worse, your death. And I think but now, today, I think it's extremely important that LGBTQIA folks have that representation. But what my thing is, they create that representation. We take an elf and we make them the gayest thing in the world if we want to. We take a dwarf and make them a trans character. We have a disability, we take an orc and make them handicapped, like they're in a wheelchair. We create our representation. Because my very first character was a halfling wizard, hence my title. And I always tell people that D&D is a great place because usually you make these ideal versions of yourself. I was trying to make a character that was absolutely not me because I was hiding. I wanted a character that would be absolutely no one would look at and go, I think he might be a little on the side. No, I made a character that was completely what I thought society wanted me to be. So he was this straight character who had a wife and kids and all this thing. And he's a great character. He's still alive today. I still use him in things. Changed a lot since then. But now it's the idea that representation was really, for me, was dangerous. And now it's one of those things where I'm very much, I push people. So look, you build a character how you want to build it. If you want to represent yourself, it's important, but you have to be the representation. That's why I love the video, and we're gonna drop the link to that YouTube in the description, and everybody should go watch it. It's really great and he talks about the representation has always been there. You just have to look for it. And then he went through some examples. He shows some examples of African, or he calls themselves Negroes. And I'm going to honor what he would like. He said there's Negro representation in D&D. And he points out several examples. And the funny thing is I never notice it. Because I always look, and this is the sad thing, is I always look for the characters that look like me.
Right.
And I think that is on us, honestly, to a point, that we are not looking for the representation. We're not looking for the diversity. We're looking for ourselves. I'm not looking for the Hispanic or the Negro or the Chinese, or I'm not looking for any of those. I'm literally looking for what race? The white people.
Right.
Sad to say. Because by no means would I ever never have I ever, nor would I ever play another like real life race character. Because one, I don't know what the hell I'd be talking about. So my experience in the idea of representation, to go back to our point, is that for me, it was a dangerous thing. So I was not looking for that representation when I first went in. But it did, D&D did help me come into terms with who I am. It allowed me, eventually my character started to gain these attributes the game made me braver. Yeah. Okay, I'll stop talking now, and we'll let Mikey talk a little bit, because I could talk all night.
Nah, it's all good. And we're here to learn, and I think that's the important bit, and that's the point of this podcast, is not just for the audience, but for us hosts to learn a little bit more about each other. So hi there, this is the young one of the group. Sitting at a good old age at the time of this recording, at a good old 29 years old.
I'll be 29 again.
Tell me about it.
As long as I can know what I know now, I would be 29 like that.
No, I'm good. I'm happy where I'm at.
No, yeah, that's a different topic. Okay, so I was a little late to the TTRPG life. I've only really been involved in it the last 3 years, and that was mostly because of this thing called the pandemic, where everybody was in lockdown for a little bit. So in order to alleviate for me strangling my family members that we were all stuck together for those year or two, love it to death. We all grew stronger, but at the same time, I'm just like, I need something because I'm about to strangle somebody. And so I discovered TTRPG. But as far as representation goes, to Will's point, I didn't really truly understand what that meant until I became an adult when I graduated high school. And then I went off to college and experienced college life and people from all walks of life. So I was a child growing up in the 90s. And to say the least, that the Latino representation during the 90s was little to non-existent, especially for good representation, not the stereotypical ones that I was used to seeing. So interestingly enough, my representation and what I identified with as a kid And I've said this on multiple occasions, but I identified with a lot of the African American community when I was growing up, elementary, middle, and high school, because that's all I saw, because I didn't see anybody brown. So the next best thing in my head was I'm going to support my African American peoples. And that was a lot of the representation I saw through my cartoons. Like some of my favorite characters, like across the board, like on the Rugrats, my favorite character growing up was Susie Carmichael. She was a Black woman. Her parents were amazing. By the way, shout out to her voice actress. Cree Summers is one of my favorite voice actresses, period. Love her. She is great. Yeah, I love Susie Carmichael, a Codename Kids Next Door on Cartoon Network. My favorite character was Number 5. She was like also voiced by Cree Summers. She was the Black girl, and she was cool, but she was very intelligent, and it was so fun to watch. And then as I got older too, like I started identifying with a lot of in the comic books, again, because I didn't see a lot of representation of brown. I ended up falling more in love with the female superheroes. Like some of my favorite female superheroes are Wonder Woman and Zatanna from the DC comics, and more recent iterations like Spider-Gwen from Marvel. And then just falling in love because I didn't have that representation. So I was identified with the African American and the female community as well, my women in my life, because a lot of it mirrored because I thought strong women were cool, because that's essentially getting a little personal here. That's how my mom is. She's your very typical short, loud Mexican mom. Like, love, she'll agree with me. Like, as much headaches as she gave me, she was my inspiration because she's independent, she's very strong, and she fights for what is right. And so that's what I tried to look for when I was growing up. And it wasn't until I went to university that I started to understand, at least for me, not only how important representation is and what that is, what that means, but it was also because, given the fact that I am still fairly young, even though I'm about to be 30 in a couple of months, just the way and my experiences with the way that I interacted with the world has been completely different than, say, how Will or Adolfo interacted with the world at the young 20-year-old stage of life, because society was a whole lot different too. And history doesn't repeat itself, but it tends to echo a whole damn lot throughout the ages in some form or another. And so it wasn't until I started seeing, and some people might not like this, but it wasn't until I started seeing all the injustices that were going on across all the communities where that kind of made me start to research and to be more educated on all these things. Because growing up with that lack of representation, I grew up within other communities because that's what I identified as. And then as I got older, I realized that if I'm going to be a part of these communities, despite my skin color, I need to be educated on all the facts and all the things that are going on. So my representation comes from my soapbox that I always get on is that it's all about a conversation for me. And I always want to make sure that when I'm talking about something or issues of a different ethnicity or race or marginalized group, I want to do my due diligence and research the facts, talk to people before I say anything, because I don't want to be talking out of my ass, so to speak. But my representation is very important to me. And I feel that now I want to say this. According to everybody, I am categorized as a millennial. I will gladly take and run with that, whatever. But the bad rap that we get, that we constantly complain or we're too involved in caring about what happens to other people in marginalized group, I was like, of course we have to. I was like, you're just mad because the younger folks are starting to get tired of all the crap that's going on in the world, and we want actual change for it. I was like, it's not that bad to ask for a little something. It's just, you're just mad because all the years of keeping everybody underneath your thumb is starting to give way a little bit, and people aren't going to take your shit no more.
Yep.
That's a whole different topic.
Yeah, whole different topic for another show. Another episode, exactly. But it's growing up. I was the youngest. I had a very different experience than my older brothers and my older sister and my parents had. We moved from Puerto Rico to Acton, Massachusetts, which is right smack in the middle of Irish Italian Massachusetts.
Wow.
there weren't even any African Americans when it came to the colored folk. We were the colored folk, and growing up, I have two older brothers and an older sister, and they had horrible issues because English is their second language. And same thing with my parents. English was their second language. And because of that, they really forced me to speak and learn English. So that's why now when I speak, if I speak Spanish, most Spanish speakers, they'll hear that my accent is off. But that's why, because to me, I was forced to learn English and have that pretty much become my first language. But the reason I bring this up is because as a small kid, I was a really big comic book fan, really big tabletop fan, cartoon fan. And the comic book character that I saw myself the most in was Wolverine. And that is because I got in fights all the time because I had to, because people, looking back now, I guess it is because I was the minority. So these people kept stepping up and I constantly had to fight. And I constantly had to fight fucked up fights. Like there were 5 neighborhood kids that would beat on me constantly. And I remember when I would pick up, and for those that don't know, Wolverine, he's a Marvel character. He's an X-Man. He's one of the more popular X-Men out there. But when it comes to representation, right? Him and me are on complete different opposite sides of the spectrum because he's a Canadian. I'm Puerto Rican. Where I saw myself was that just rage, that anger, how he would just, what rating are we shooting for on this podcast, Mikey?
I would say keep it somewhere between PG-13 and a light R rating.
Okay.
I was thinking like NC-17 R. We don't want it, obviously, but
that's the after. Stay tuned for the After Hours podcast.
No, I was just about to drop an F-bomb, so I
do it. There's a reason why.
Oh yeah, that's fine.
I do it all the time.
Okay, cool. The way that Wolverine would fuck people up in the comics, and that's what he was known for, being the best at what he did, and that was fucking people up. And that, good, bad, or indifferent, was what young me got known for, was being the best at fucking people up. And that's who I saw myself in. Wolverine. Talking about representation. So again, like now, older, hell yeah, I want people with brown skin to be able to look at a tabletop RPG and be like, oh, hey, that's awesome. I see another person of brown skin. When the 5th edition Player's Handbook for Dungeons & Dragons came out, and I think it's page 2, there is a fighter of color, like prominent. And then there was a female fighter of color. Yo, I geeked out on that. I was like, that's awesome. That is awesome. I am saddened that it's either gotten to a point that the people with the suit and ties are, apparently the people of color, they like these things. So perhaps if we throw a picture of them in there, they'll buy our product more.
There's such an inauthenticity to it.
Yeah.
Like that, the pessimist in me thinks that. But then the optimist in me is, no, I think that these are now the writers of the old books. There was their way of doing things. Now these new writers, they're like, this is the world that we live in, so we need to bring more in. And that, I like to lean more towards the optimistic side, because one thing that RPG Elite did bring up in that episode, which Will, that you touched on, is that there is representation of people of color in the books, in the artwork. You just maybe you flipped past that page because that's not who you were looking for.
Yeah.
But does that mean that you are an insensitive prick that should have your head bashed in? I don't think so. Because at that time, especially if you're a kid, I think of young Adolfo. I think of you, young Will. You were looking for that cool character that you could see yourself in, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you found it on page whatever.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. As you were talking, and I was thinking, we're talking about representation, and you're talking about how, we've got Hispanics now. Let's throw some little things in there that will draw them to us. And then I was like, if you look back, yes, my generation, we weren't perfect by any means. But you look at things like G.I. Joe and representation, like across the board. Oh, yeah, right there. And yes, when you look back on it and if you go deeper into it, which honestly and truly, I think most people tend to go too deep into things. Yes, were they perfect? No. Were they closer to stereotypes? In some instances, yes. In some instances, no. We had like Native American representation. We had Hispanic characters. We had Asian characters. Of course, we had the white character who was the leader, of course. And that's, I sometimes think, is where the imperfect part of it is, like the white guy's always the leader. I think that's where we get into trouble. It's why can't whomever be the leader, as opposed to, I don't know, was it Spirit was the Native American character, I believe?
Yep.
Like, why can't he be the leader? So I think when it comes to representation, sometimes, and this is not everyone, and this is probably going to be a very unpopular opinion, and I'm okay with that, is that I think we go searching for it. We go searching for something to bitch about. And that's why I think sometimes we look past the images of the POC folks in the books, because we want to find something that we can rip on. Because either we're bored, whatever it is, it's that toxic behavior that needs to be dealt with. And you have those people who do it intentionally. They're trolls. They're trolling.
Yep.
They're going to do it so they can get a rise out of people. They're like, oh, hey, if you look in this book, you'll see that there's no POC representation. And you're like, okay, that book was written back in the 1970s. What the hell are you looking at that book for? We don't even follow any of that anymore. If you really look, 5e is so far removed from the original Dungeons and Dragons. Literally, I don't think you could find, other than the rules or suggestions, you're not going to find a lot of similarities between it.
Yeah.
But people search for it and they go, and I think that's where we get into trouble sometimes, is that there are people, now are there injustices in the world? Absolutely. Can we do better? Absolutely. But I think that we have those fringe groups, and I always say the minority always screws it up for the majority. There's always that minority of zealots, let's call them, that literally comb all of these old tomes looking for something. Mm-hmm. It could be something they completely askew. They go, oh, it says this, but what they really mean is this. And that's not at all what that means. And usually a lot of times it's people who have absolutely no background in the thing that they're basically commenting on. Yep. It's I'm in theater, I'm a professor of theater. Let me tell you, one of the biggest things is we get people who write editorials about a show that we're doing, and they've never seen the show. But because they heard something about the show, it makes them an expert on it.
Yep.
And I think we're getting a lot of that. And that is super toxic behavior. And that is behavior that we really need to nip that in the bud.
Yeah.
Is we need to get rid of those people. Because those are the people that are sitting in the background, egging people on, feeding the fire. They truly have nothing invested in the games. They're literally people just fanning the flames.
Yep.
And we can segue this into what we were talking about earlier about fandoms.
Yep. Yeah. I was about to say, this is actually a great segue into that conversation. So there are two recent history. There have been some big examples of toxic fandom and how much of a detriment they are. But just recently, there have been two examples. So first and foremost is the Netflix show The Witcher. So Henry Cavill, who played The Witcher for the first 2-3 seasons of the show, he is stepping down as The Witcher for reasons. And they have some other really good looking white dude that's coming in to be the Witcher. It's the Hemsworth brother, not Liam. It's Liam Hemsworth. He's going to be stepping into to be the Witcher. And the amount of toxicity that has been tossed at like Henry Cavill and the show and this, because Henry Cavill's stepped away from the show. And just like you said, Will, these are people that have absolutely no background, not watched the show, not looked to see why exactly did he step away. Now, mind you, there's a lot of, unfortunately, there hasn't been an actual press release as to why he stepped away. But from what I've seen, from the research I've done on Henry Cavill's part, he's making this step away as amicable as possible. But the fandom is losing their shit. And they are sending him toxic messages. They're sending the showrunners toxic messages. And Liam Hemsworth, they're already setting him up to fail, and he hasn't even been. No. I'm sorry. I've watched however many episodes of The Witcher there is on Netflix. Okay. And Henry Cavill, he's a good actor. He's a nice hunk of meat to look at. Yep. Okay. But, Indeed. Right. But I'll tell you what, other than those scenes where he was like buck naked, like in a bathtub or in other states of undress, like his acting, there were a few scenes where he did have some gravitas, but in my unprofessional opinion, the drama that was held up in that show wasn't Henry Cavill. It was the supporting cast, because The Witcher, Henry Cavill's character, there were a lot of episodes that if he appeared, it was only for a little bit. But then a lot of episodes focused on a lot of the other stuff that was going on in the world with the other Witchers, with the one sorceress and the mage school and the other young princess that's turning into a Witcher. Dude, acting wise, to me, they're the ones that held that show. Yeah. The only thing that Henry Cavill was there to do was to like show off his awesomely chiseled pecs and to like grunt at the camera so that everyone would like have instant orgasm when he grunts at the camera. You know what I mean? Yeah. And sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish your statement.
And I like for everyone to be, not everyone, but for the fandom, for loud, toxic fandom to be in such an uproar about this when it's y'all are getting another hunky white dude to play this freaking character. The character is not given freaking Shakespearean monologues. Okay, he grunts at the camera every once in a while. He swings a sword, and then has pecs the size of freaking Montana. Yeah, you know what I mean. So I'm like, why? And then, go ahead.
I was going to just the thing about these fandoms that I have observed. Now, I am a member of many fandoms, Star Trek, Doctor Who, et cetera, But one of the things I've noticed, especially about like things like The Witcher or Game of Thrones is another one, is that most of the people who are the most toxic are the ones that are not familiar with the true source material. I'm not saying all of them, because as a member of a fandom when Star Trek, and I'll touch on this real quick, when the original when the Next Generation was about to come out, I remember thinking, this is ridiculous. This is stupid. How can you replace the original cast? I was one of them. And then I watched it, and I fell in love with it. Never once did I ever say, I'm never going to watch it. I'm not going to watch it. And you have those people that are like that. When Henry Cavill, because I was not familiar with this whole thing until we had talked previously. So I went and did my research, and I did some stuff. I did some looking up. And these people are like, oh, I won't watch it anymore. It's all blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, why? Liam Hemsworth is not a bad actor. Not truly. I've seen him do many things. He's not a bad actor. So what's everyone's issue? And like you said, you're right. Here's replacing one hunky white man with another hunky white man. So who cares? And you're right. The Witcher is not about him. It's about the culture of Witchers we just seem to be focusing on that particular one. But then one of the great things I do is towards the end of the last season is when they started to focus on a lot of The Witcher. That's when it got interesting for me when it came to Witchers, because I was like, Henry Cavill, I like him. I think he's a really good actor, and all that. But I was like, okay, he's good to look at. He's nice to look at. But I was actually more interested in the mage schools. I was all about that.
Yeah, and then that whole political intrigue that was going on with that one kingdom that fell and all that. Yep. Yeah, I was vested with that. And the princess.
It's not about The Witcher.
Yeah, I was vested with that. That's what kept me watching. But
these folks that are spewing this stuff, it's either they're not familiar with the source material, or they're so familiar with the source material that no matter what happens, they're going to bitch and moan about it.
And I don't get that. I don't get that. Like, all right, I'm a comic book guy. I am a comic book guy. And when the X-Men movie, the live action X-Men movies came out.
Talking about the original 3?
Yeah. Yeah, with Patrick Stewart. And Marsden and Famke Jensen and all them. I, as a comic book guy, actually, I'll even go further. When the original Sam Raimi Spider-Man came out, because I'm Spider-Man comic book guy too. I, as a comic book fan and a lover of the actual printed book, I did not like what I saw on the screen. However, I was still able to go and watch the movie and be like, wow, that was an entertaining movie. That was an entertaining movie. And I actually got to see like Spider-Man, not 1970s Spider-Man, like a pretty cool flick.
See him on the big screen.
Right, see him on the big screen. A few years down the line, the X-Men came out again, like from the comic book source material. No, I was not happy because it strayed far from the source material. However, it was a cool action movie. The actors did a great job, and again, if we get into a comic book conversation, that's where I can start like picking it apart. But as a movie, as like a summer blockbuster movie, to go eat popcorn and watch and be entertained, I ate popcorn and I was entertained. Why am I going to waste all this energy to pump all this all this toxic stuff out to make other people?
It's not going to do any different. Not going to make any difference at all. Why do you even do it?
Like Witcher, okay? If they start straying away from the source material,
it's okay.
But it's okay. If it's still entertaining to watch, if you still sit there and binge the entire thing, if you watch like one of these new episodes with Liam Hemsworth, you watch 15 minutes of it, shut it off and be like, I can't. That's all right, cool. You have a beef. I want to listen to you. Yeah. But if you actually sit and binge the entire season, and then want to start saying stuff, you invested however many hours it was to watch all those episodes. There must have been something. That kept you going. So that's
No, I agree with you. Yeah, you're going to find it everywhere. All of them have it. Lord of the Rings. There's a great YouTuber, and I can't remember his name, but he is like a Lord of the Rings like expert. And so many people attack him, and he's just like, here, let me go back to the source material. And he's very much, you can like the movies and you can like the books. Yeah. You don't have to eat one or the other.
That's very much along the lines of the African American TikToker who's a huge Lord of the Rings fan, and he knows his shit.
Yeah, like, is that the one that dressed up in the? There's another one that like did the whole full on Gondor. Like,
no, I think that's
armor.
I think that's a different.
Okay, he's really great too. I like him too.
Yeah, but I remember how when the Rings of Power came out and everyone was up in arms, and this is a great segue into our other toxic conversation.
Oh my gosh, I'm so ready.
But when the Ring of Powers came out and everyone was hating on it, this African American TikToker came out and he was like, I enjoy it for what it is. And he admits, it's not, these aren't his exact words, but it's a fanfic of Tolkien's work, but it's enjoyable. And I like the characters. And I just find it funny because all these individuals keep kept coming at him, and like he would pull from like the Silmarillion and this book of the Elder Blaylock, this and that and the other, and I'm just like, really, y'all? Can you not see that this individual like just enjoy? Can we not sit at this geek table and enjoy and like maybe have discourse if we have a disagreement about it? Like maybe have discourse. Do you have to just vet all this toxicity for what? So which brings up to our next toxic fandom, Mikey.
Which is, well, let me touch on it before we get, because this will segue into it. But the reason people were so up in arms over the Rings of Power is because of the dwarves, because of the race.
Yes,
that was one of the big ones. They were like, "What is going on?" I don't know. And it's like,
I was so upset at people. I was
I was too. I was like, "What are you talking about, people? What the hell?" First of all, these are fantasy characters. They're not real life. They weren't alive. So we're not changing their race because when the dwarves were on the world, they were all white. Yeah. What? So with that kind of brings us in, and we're going to go and we're going to touch on another one that is, I think, all three of us in the same box here. But I'm going to let Mikey talk about it because Mikey is very passionate about this. So I'm going to let him.
This one made absolutely no sense. Now, I don't want to excuse people's behavior of the previous topics, but like in a very, and I want to preface saying a very tiny percentage, I was like, okay, I can see why people bitch about it, whatever. But this issue that I'm about to talk about, it made no freaking sense to me whatsoever. At the time of this recording in 2023, a couple months ago, it was announced because Disney is now doing live action versions of all of their classic animated movies. So far, we've gotten like The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast and Jungle Book and all that stuff. I've enjoyed some of them more than others, but the more recent live action one that's about to drop in theaters in 2023 is The Little Mermaid. So initially, people were, what fandoms do, Disney fandoms were starting to cast all of the parts and who would play them, blah, 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 as we tend to do, especially in movies and TV shows. So then they announced the cast. And when I tell you that the internet and just people in general were all up in arms with the casting choice, baffled my mind. So it was announced that, and I'm going to stick up for her because I'm a huge fan of her work, but I also think she's a very lovely young lady. So the lead, Ariel's going to be played by R&B singer Halle Bailey, who is one half of the sister duo Chloe and Halle, who are both musicians. Go stream Ungodly Hour, is great R&B. But the point is that she's an African-American young woman, and she is going to be playing the lead of Ariel. And I was excited. I was like, cool, we get an African-American mermaid. It's for the kids. I was like, okay, cool, this is going to be great. And then the discourse online happened, and people were all up in arms saying that, why she gotta be black? This is like, what is up with this? That's not my Ariel. I'm like, why are we arguing about the color of a fish person, people? It is a fish person. And so, and I feel so bad for her because in interviews, she's stated that she's always dreamed she wanted to inspire little girls, and she wanted to be a Disney princess. So that way kids in general, because listen, I was a kid of the 90s. Princess Jasmine was my role model. Loved Princess Jasmine. But again, strong, independent women. But the point being is that she wants to inspire kids and show them, be like, hey, I want to be that representation on the screen. And people were not having it. And it saddened me and it made me mad. And then I was like, when this movie drops, I don't care about everything else. I'm going to go watch this movie because I need to support her and I need to support the message behind it. I was like, why you guys up? And you would think that people would have learned from the last time this happened, but no, apparently not. Because a few years ago, the same thing happened when Disney decided to do Princess and the Frog, and people were throwing a fit when they introduced that Tiana was going to be the princess, and she happened to be African American and was going to take place in New Orleans and all this stuff. And then to add on to that too, because Disney is planning to change Splash Mountain to fit the Princess and the Frog, which I'm like, okay, cool. Because listen, as much as I love the original Splash Mountain, you have to realize the movie that it was based on was very problematic because it was based off the movie Song of the South. And if you know nothing about that movie, I don't want to say go watch it because it's very problematic and very racial, but it is considered Disney's biggest mistake, especially just looking at the history of things. And Disney has done some problematic stuff. But Splash Mountain, as it is now, is originally based on a movie called Song of the South, and it was very racially insensitive. Look up pictures of the crow. That's all I'm going to say, because early Disney was very bad. Do we not remember the crows from Dumbo as well? Anyways, but my point being is that, and this
Honestly,
encompasses...
most people probably don't remember the crows from Dumbo.
Yeah.
Which is
or
sad.
They choose... Yeah, I was just like, they were very bad. And as a child, I did not know better. And then as an adult, I would like to thank my 11th grade U.S. history teacher, because part of our unit during World War II, we had to watch all the racist cartoons that were making fun of the war. So like Donald Duck as a Nazi and the Asian stereotypes from Looney Tunes. I was like, damn, that was dark. And then we had to watch some of the... Yeah, and then we had to also watch the older ones where, listen, blackface is very bad, but we had to watch cartoons with African Americans, like the very base version of what people perceive them to be, like big lips and looking more in simian-like features. I was like, it was. But back to the topic at hand. Yeah, I was so mad. I was like, can we not have anything nice? I was just like, it's a fish person. Fish person could be of any color if we're being realistic. And there you are, a fish person. It's not a human being. It's not based on an actual person. If you want to get mad at something, y'all should be mad at Disney for toning down the actual story of The Little Mermaid, because it's based off a Hans Christian Andersen original story. And that shit was a lot darker. Yeah, it was a lot darker. There was no happy ending for half this crap.
A lot of them. You can look at a lot of them. Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, all of those. The original source material, most of it came from Grimm's. And if you people are not familiar with Grimm's fairy tales, go look them up, and you will see how much dark they are.
The original Grimm's fairy tales, because over the years they have been desensitized. But yes, the original Grimm's fairy tales, they were written as cautionary tales.
Yeah,
and they were, for the time, they would be what we would consider R-rated stuff for our time. That was that time's R-rated material, but the reason was because they were written as cautionary tales. And over the years, as I'm going to use the word again, as they've been rolled into the cultural zeitgeist, the Grimm's fairy tales have had their teeth and their venom pulled from them to make them more kid-friendly, at which then turns into like the Disney movies, and not just the Disney movies, but like a lot of the animated movies and whatnot. Take another example of a non-Disney movie, Anastasia.
Ooh, people were upset.
You want to talk about dark in real life? Anastasia wasn't even a real person. They found out that she was a lie. That individual was a lie. And then, like, the family got murdered behind like closed doors, and yay Russia. But, you wouldn't know that from watching the Anastasia movie. You think it's all songs and cute little white bats. But yeah, and it's funny coming back to The Little Mermaid. To me, I'm not even thinking about who's playing, what race playing, what was. To me, like, the minute I heard that they were doing a Little Mermaid live action movie, I was like, who are they going to find that has the singing voice, the pipes to carry that movie? Because if you're going to make a Little Mermaid movie and the music is going to be instrumental part, like in the animated version, then you need someone that's going to sing. And I think that the choice they made, when I heard her sing, I was like, yes, that is a voice that a sea witch wants to steal. Right there. Didn't even cross my mind that, it's a person of color or anything like that. It wasn't until all the toxicity started flying around. Oh my God, Little Mermaid. black now. Blah, blah, blah.
With that whole, I'm noticing a trend here too. Because listen, there's toxicity across all the fandoms in some shape or form. But at least in my little worlds that I've inhabited in, I've noticed that a lot of the issues when it comes to either remaking or redoing, or for lack of a better term, like the diversity and representation in things, a lot of the biggest voices that are complaining about it tend to be from genres that either include fairy tales and or fantasy kinds of things for whatever reason. And like I said, and at least this is in my world too, because this is a horrible example, but and there was a little discourse, but I don't remember there being that big of much of a stink when people say, oh, we're going to make a Black Panther movie. I was just like, yo, that's sick. I didn't hear anybody complain about that. I didn't hear anybody complain about when they announced that they were going to do Shang-Chi. I was just like, so if I was just like, so we're not going to, I was like, all you haters, you're not as vocal now. Why? Is it because if you say something, you're about to get dragged across the internet?
I would like to pose a question.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be a popular question. All right. I know this is coming through the door, but I have to bring this up for the culture. All right. Why is it okay and heralded and lauded to have the Black Panther movie, but it's not okay and lauded to have an African American Little Mermaid?
I'll tell you why.
Go for it.
Because of Disney. Disney created what we know as the Little Mermaid when they did the animated version. So all we know is that Ariel was a white mermaid. That is in our culture. That was our culture. So when they changed the race, it threw that culture into like chaos. Then you have those people who are like, yes, indeed, bring it on. It's going to be amazing. And then you have the older folks, probably the ones mostly that are throwing the fit. And because they're like, that's not the Little Mermaid I grew up on. You're right. It's not. It's the Little Mermaid that this generation's going to grow up. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Right.
It's both. It's both of them. The white version of Ariel, which I grew up on and love. And now we have an African American Ariel that a whole new generation gets to watch and grow up on and see themselves in. What the hell's wrong with that? Nothing is wrong with that. It's okay to have two Ariels. It's okay. And that's the thing, is Disney created that culture for us when they made The Little Mermaid. That's what happened. That's why it's in our culture. That's why if you look back on things like Fantasia, you can see the stereotypes all over that thing. But we still like it. We still love it because of the music. It's classical music. How can classical music be bad? It's because Disney created that culture when they created the film. So that is in our culture now. So we think, because we are whether we want to admit it or not, we are a visual society. We are a visual species. We see something, we lock it in. That's how it's supposed to be. Like, and I'm giving an example in Fantasia, the little mushrooms that are the Asian stereotypes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That, it's locked in.
Yeah.
And suddenly that's it. So when we see anything outside of that, it makes no sense to us because it's been created. It's been put forth. Our culture is being developed by every television show, every movie that we watch. That's our culture. And I have to applaud those people and companies and production folks that are creating these alternative culture building blocks, like with the new Little Mermaid. They're creating that. Here's another way of looking at it. It doesn't have to be this way or that way. It can be both. It's okay. Same way with, like we were talking about with The Witcher and The Lord of the Rings, Star Trek and Star Wars. The movies are just another way of looking at it. I've read all of the Lord of the Rings books. I've read The Hobbit. The movies are not the books. They're not meant to be the books. That's the thing. And I think that's the issue with fandoms, is they think that the movie is going to be the book. It's not. It never will be. Harry Potter's They're not the same. The Harry Potter movies are not the books. I've read all the books, and I knew when they first announced they were making the Sorcerer's Stone, I was like, it's not going to be the book, but I'm going to go watch it. And I enjoyed it, but it wasn't the book. And that's okay, because I knew it wasn't going to be the book. And so that's where the fandoms go wrong, is they need to understand that in comic books as well, with the comic book movies, they're not going to be the comics.
Yep.
When the new Star Trek movies, the newer ones came out, I was like, I knew these were not going to be like old school. They're not going to be. And they weren't. And I loved them. I really did. I applauded their whole idea of the whole alternate universe. I thought it was great. I was like, how are they going to do this? Boom, they did it. And I was like, wow, that's not my Star Trek, but I freaking love it. Hell yeah. I am always going to be a Prime Trek timeline fan, because that's just how I am. But I'm not going to not watch things, because you miss out on so much. For instance, when Star Trek Discovery came out, I was very much, I don't know about this. How can they have this, that, and the other? And I watched it, and I was like, holy hell, this is awesome.
Yeah.
Why does it have to be one way? Why can it not be some other way? Discovery is a completely different Star Trek. Completely different than anything else we've ever seen. Why can we not have that and have this too? Why can they not live in the same universe together and we be like, yes, this is amazing? Strange New Worlds, Picard, all of them. And you have these people that are just hating on them. And it's like, why? That's not who we are. As a culture, as a sci-fi, geeky, nerd culture, we're not like that. Star Trek's not about that. Star Trek's about inclusion. The original series. Gene Roddenberry was making strides by putting a black woman in a command position on the bridge of the Enterprise. With an Asian, a Russian, a Scotsman. Why can we not have all of it? Why does it have to be one or the other? That is my big question, and that's to everybody in the universe. Why does it have to be either this or that? Why can't it be both? Why can't we have both? The X-Men, the original X-Men movies, and then the newer X-Men movies. Why can't we have them both? Why do I have to like one or the other? Why can't I just like them both? Because they're great. Are they the comics? No, they're not the comics. Or we're going to be the comics. So my big thing to people out there is get off of your fucking high horse and like it for what it is. Not for what your screwed up vision of it's supposed to be. And that's all I'm going to say on that. It's back to you.
Time check. Don't you all have a game?
We do. Yeah. We have another 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. We have another 5 minutes.
I feel that this is a good place to wrap up then. Yeah. Yeah, that was a good look. I appreciate that answer, Will. Thank you very much. I did want to leave this episode though, again, bringing it back to the whole Black Panther and
Shang-Chi
Little Mermaid thing, right? Taking it a step further for the African American culture, why is Black Panther more celebrated than a Black Little Mermaid? Not with the Hispanic community, right? Why does it seem like everyone loses their collective shit when Pitbull comes out with a new album, but like when a gorgeous piece of artwork representing brown people, right, in Maya and the Three, which is on Netflix, which if you haven't had a chance to go to,
please do. Great storytelling
based in Mesoamerican culture and mythology. Thank you, honey. Mythology. But why were the Hispanics not like, yo, mira, tú necesito aquí en Netflix, okay, Maya and the Three, right? But no se ponía. Like, it slaps, baby. It's, yo, what? So that's why that is a thing I would like to mull over going
good.
Going into next.
That's a good question that we can put forth to our soon to be audience.
Yep.
And maybe they can leave comments in the comment section and ask us questions. Yeah, if you have questions, ask, and we'll try to answer them the best that we can.
Yep.
But I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. It's like, why can you laud one but you can't the other? It's why is this one okay but that one's
right?
But like, I'm very excited about the second Black Panther, and the only reason I'm excited about it is because we get Namor.
Yeah.
I'm like super hello, and a quite dashing man playing him as well.
Oh yeah.
Like, I was like, another sexy brown boy in the movies, and I'm super excited about that.
Indeed. Yeah.
I think that's, absolutely. If you guys all out there, you have questions, drop them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah. We'll answer them as best we can with the knowledge that we have. We can only speak to you from personal experience and observation. We have some research going behind the scenes as well, but we'll definitely answer anything that we can. And what we can't, we'll find the answer somewhere. Maybe we can find someone else who would know the answer. Also, to make sure you check out in the description of the video, the link to the YouTube video. And also, I think I might drop I put a link in our little discussion there to Grimm's Fairy Tales. Maybe we'll drop those in and let people check those out as well.
Yeah.
And I think those are the unedited versions of.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're public domain now. The original versions. Yeah, they're public domain.
So maybe people can check those out and see how different they are from the Disney-fied versions of them. All right. Well, if we've got nothing else, I guess we will say our adieus. Thank you all for listening to the Diver-Gents. I am Will, and I am joined by my two amazing co-hosts, Mikey and Adolfo, who are amazing, and I love them both. But yeah, if you have any POC questions, they can answer them for you. Because I'm a white man, and I'm not going to try to do that. If you have some gay questions, I could totally answer those. But other than that, I kid, of course. But we're here to help. We're here to talk, and we're not going to mince words. So thank you all for listening, and we love you all. And I'm going to stop and let them say goodbye.
Until next time, podcast audience, thank you for tuning into another episode of The Diver-Gents, and I hope you return for the next episode because it looks like we have our next topic at hand, and I'm excited to have these conversations with some like-minded individuals.
Yep, hope you all enjoyed this, and as we say, nos vemos. Mwah. Ciao.
Au revoir.